Hello, everybody. My name is Dan Christensen. My topic today is about the complexity of the modern day college soccer recruiting process. For those that are unfamiliar with the recruiting process, it is defined as the process in which college coaches add prospective athletes to their roster each off-season. Over the last 10 to 20 years, the recruiting process has become a lot more competitive, thus making it a lot more complex. My purpose in today's project is to show you the reasons on why the recruiting process has become a lot more competitive, which has made it a lot more complex. To do this, I'm going to start a reasons board right here, and that will be a way in which my audience can retain what I am saying. My research findings today were through primary and secondary research. The secondary research were all credible sources, and the primary research was through a survey of the UWF men's soccer team, in which I received 29 responses and 1 response from head coach Bill Elliott, leading to 30 responses in total. I also did interview student athlete Carl Norin, which was also very impactful for the purpose of my project. To start, I'd like to show the increase in international student athletes in college soccer. According to a study done by the NCAA between 2013 to 2018, there was a 54% increase in international soccer student athletes during that time, and specifically a 62% increase in men's international student athletes and 45% increase in women's. Also, a study done by Ryan Kirk and Anthony Weaver showed that the percentage of teams with 25% of their roster being international or higher increased from 12% to 33% between 2005 to 2016. This number in 2024 is most likely over 60% today, as when I did my survey, a question I asked the team was, do you feel like the majority of teams you play are mostly international? And 67% of the UWF soccer team said that the majority of teams they play are mainly international. The rise in international student athletes increases the complexity of the recruiting process, as the complexity of the recruiting process is measured by the amount of players available. The more players available, the more complex the recruiting process. You may be asking, why are international student athletes now wanting to come to America to play college soccer? As 20 years ago, most college soccer rosters consisted of mostly American, and today most college soccer rosters have a good amount of international student athletes on their team. The answer varies based on the international student athlete you ask, so there is a wide range of different reasons. We're going to start a board now, a new board, unrelated to it is related, but we're going to start a board on the reasons why international student athletes come to America. So let's go to my interview. My interview was on Carl Norin. The reason I interviewed Carl Norin was due to the fact he's an international student athlete who decided to come to America. The reason I chose Carl Norin and specifically is that he was a very highly recruited player out of Sweden, and he chose West Florida, and that made me want to pick him as my interviewee. Carl told me a variety of different factors which led him to play college soccer in America. The first reason he told me was that his sister played in America, and he visited her in 2022, and he really liked it here. Carl told me that the main reason he came to America to play was due to the fact that America offers a high level of soccer and a high level of education. He told me that that is something that is not offered in Europe. He also told me weather was a factor, as he wanted to live somewhere warm. I then asked Carl questions about what he did to take action once he wanted to come to America. Carl told me he hired an agent. He said every international student athlete looking to come to America hires an agent. These agents contact thousands of college coaches a day, which increases the amount of players available for these college coaches, which increases the complexity of the recruiting process. So we'll add that to our first list beforehand, being that agencies are now involved in college soccer as well. Carl said that he told the agent he wanted to play D1 or D2 and go to Florida. Carl was a top-ranked recruit as he once played for Sweden's youth national team. This made Carl get lots of offers from teams. This then led me to ask him questions about techniques college coaches used him to get him to the school. Because another aspect of college recruiting is how college coaches get the top recruits to come to their program. Carl told me that the techniques coaches used included the coaches telling him how great the school was, having players reach out, and the amount of scholarship offer. Carl said the reason he chose West Florida was due to the fact they offered him an official visit. An official visit is when a college soccer program pays for a recruit to visit, pays for their whole trip, the plane expense, the hotel, everything, for them to come to their school and visit in hopes that they will like it and commit there. Carl said that this made him feel wanted, and this was the ultimate reason he chose West Florida. I then asked Carl questions about how the recruiting process has become more complex in recent years. Carl told me that the increase in international student athletes increased the complexity of the recruiting process, but Carl also mentioned gap year. The gap year is when a high school senior takes a year after their senior year. The reason is they feel like they need a year to develop, and then they'll reach out to colleges after their year after high school. Carl is spot on, as the gap year increases the amount of players available in the recruiting process, making it more complex. So we'll add that to the board as well. We'll add gap year players. And gap year was something that was not around 20 years ago, by the way. So this gap year is a new process. I'm now going to go over reasons for internationals coming to America again. A source written by Jonathan Sutherland, who was an international student athlete, shows his reason for coming to America. The reason for Jonathan was that he came to a realization that less than 0.0012% of England's youth go professional. Jonathan then chose to go to America for college soccer as he wanted a good education. So we'll bring in the other board, the reasons why international students come to America, and we'll add that being that the failure to go pro in their respective country. So moving on, an article by Victoria Jackson about women's college soccer going professional shows a reason why internationals come to America. One piece of evidence she provided was that the Tokyo Olympic gold medalist Canada had 25 members that played or currently play college soccer, showing that college soccer is a pro pathway for internationals. So we'll also add that to a reason why internationals come to America. The pro pathway in America is also very successful. Another way in which I found why internationals come to America for college soccer was through the survey. As previously mentioned, the survey consisted of the UWF men's soccer team with 29 responses from players and 1 from head coach Bill Elliott. I began the survey asking if the participant was international. If so, what was the international's reason for coming to America? The 50% of the team that were internationals had similar answers, being college soccer offers a high level of soccer and good education. Others stated college soccer is a good step towards pro. Others had family in the U.S. as well, which are all reasons that we already have on the board. The survey then was useful as it backed up my previous research done in terms of reasons why internationals come to America. But the main reason for my survey and the main reason for my project is to find data and reasons on why the recruiting process has got more competitive, which has made it more complex. I asked the team, true or false? Teams that are mainly internationals are better compared to teams that are mostly American. The results showed that all 29 participants selected true. which shows why college coaches are taking international student athletes more and more if they're available, because the internationals are shown to be better in college soccer and most coaches want to win. So the more internationals you have, most of the time, as my survey backs up, the better your team is. I then asked the participants, does the increase in international students make the recruiting process more complex? 100% of the participants said yes. I then asked the participants about the transfer portal. The transfer portal is a new aspect of the recruiting process. An academic journal by Redford Reese explains how the transfer portal has made the recruiting process more complex. Before the transfer portal, athletes had no rights to their name, image, and likeness, and could not transfer from school to school without facing a year-long ban. But the transfer portal changed that in 2018. It was introduced. The transfer portal allows student athletes to change schools whenever they want without any ban. The transfer portal leads to the complexity of the recruiting process increasing as it allows for more players available. The transfer portal also influences coaches' mindset as they have to choose between high school seniors or juniors and seniors in college. So this influences coaches, as most coaches are in the win now mentality. So it's a no-brainer for coaches to go with the older student athlete, and that is proven. And this makes a lot of high school seniors take a gap year, which increases the amount of players in the gap year as well. Renford explains that coaches prior to the portal would mentor their players and had authority over the players, but with the transfer portal, this concept has been diminished. Coaches are now faced with fear of losing players, making coaches much more sensitive to players. When I asked my team about the transfer portal, 70% said they were familiar with it. All the participants that were familiar with it stated that the transfer portal led to the complexity of the recruiting process. Their reasoning being that more players available means more competition. Bill Elliott also said the transfer portal makes recruiting more complex due to more players available and players from his team leaving. I also asked Bill Elliott, how has the recruiting process changed in the last 10 years? Bill said, well, Dane, we'll change the voice for this. Well, Dane, I miss the days when I could just go to Orlando and recruit high school players from the Gatorade Cup. Back then, that's all I did in a calendar year for my recruiting. It was effective back then, but over time, my job has become more difficult, as more players all around the world now want to come play collegiate soccer. With access to internet, I get thousands of emails a week from players wanting to play for me, and I or one of my staff view every email. This means offering roster spots is extremely valuable, as up to 6 roster spots are available per year, with tens of thousands of players wanting to play for me. The transfer portal over the last 5 years, has also made it more complex, which I stated previously, but it just shows how much soccer has developed in the U.S. To conclude, over my whole project, the recruiting process in today's society has become a very complex process due to the reasons on the board here. I would also like to add another reason, being the access to internet, which I failed to mention in my project, but the access to internet has definitely increased through the world, and this has a ripple effect on the amount of players that email the coaches, which make the process more complex.